The morning sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains of apartment 4C, painting golden streaks across the hardwood floor. Olivia Chen stretched her arms above her head, feeling the pleasant pull of her muscles as she woke from a peaceful sleep. Friday morning had arrived, and with it came the promise of a weekend ahead. She glanced at her phone on the nightstand. 6:45. Perfect timing. At 27, Olivia had carved out a simple but fulfilling life for herself in the heart of the city. She taught music at Lincoln Elementary School, where children's laughter and off-key recorders filled her days. Her apartment was small, just a one-bedroom unit on the fourth floor of the Riverside building, but she had made it her own. Plants lined the windowsills, vintage posters of jazz legends decorated the walls, and her grandmother's old piano sat in the corner of the living room, its keys worn smooth from decades of use. Olivia padded to the kitchen and started her morning ritual. The coffee maker gurgled to life as she opened the window above the sink, letting in the fresh spring air. The sounds of the city waking up drifted through the courtyard below. Car horns honked in the distance, a delivery truck rumbled past, and somewhere nearby, a dog barked its morning greeting. She poured herself a cup of coffee and checked her phone. 3 messages from Rachel Kim, her best friend and fellow teacher, already making plans for their Friday night dinner. Rachel had been her closest friend since college, the kind of person who could make even the most mundane grocery shopping trip feel like an adventure. Olivia smiled as she typed back a quick response, confirming their plans. The building where Olivia lived had character. Built in the 1930s, it had been lovingly restored, maintaining its original architectural charm while adding modern conveniences. High ceilings, large windows, and decorative molding gave each unit a sense of history. The building formed a square around a central courtyard, creating an intimate community feel among the residents. After finishing her coffee and a quick breakfast of toast with honey, Olivia headed to the bathroom. She had a free period first thing at school today, which meant she could take her time getting ready. The bathroom was her favorite room in the apartment. She had painted the walls a soft sage green and installed a rainfall showerhead that made her morning routine feel luxurious. Without thinking much about it, Olivia opened the small window that looked out onto the courtyard. The night had been warm, and the bathroom still held some of yesterday's humidity. The cool morning breeze felt refreshing as it swept in. She turned on the shower, waiting for the water to reach the perfect temperature. As steam began to fill the room, Olivia felt a surge of contentment. Her life might not be glamorous, but it was hers. She had her students who adored her, friends who supported her, and enough money to live comfortably without stress. The water cascaded over her shoulders as she stepped into the shower, and without conscious thought, she began to sing. Music had always been her emotional outlet. When she was happy, sad, excited, or nervous, melodies flowed from her naturally. This morning, she felt particularly joyful. Her voice carried the opening notes of an old love song her mother used to play on Sunday mornings. The melody was sweet and nostalgic, speaking of romance and hope. Olivia's voice, trained from years of vocal lessons and practice, rang clear and true against the bathroom tiles. She closed her eyes, losing herself in the music, completely unaware that the acoustics of the courtyard were carrying her song far beyond her bathroom walls. 8 floors above, Nathan Sterling stood on his private terrace, coffee in hand, reviewing financial reports on his tablet. The penthouse was his sanctuary, a sprawling space that occupied the entire top 2 floors of the Riverside building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city skyline, and the terrace wrapped around 3 sides of the apartment, providing outdoor space that was rare in downtown living. Nathan had built his fortune from the ground up. Sterling Properties had become one of the most successful real estate development companies in the region, with projects ranging from luxury condominiums to mixed-use commercial spaces. At 36, he had achieved more than most people accomplished in a lifetime, yet success had come at a cost. His marriage had ended 5 years ago when his wife admitted she had fallen in love with someone else. Since then, Nathan had thrown himself into work, keeping relationships casual and emotions safely guarded. He took a sip of coffee, his eyes scanning the quarterly earnings report, when he heard it. A voice, clear and melodious, drifted up from somewhere below. He paused, lowering his tablet, and listened more carefully. Someone was singing, and the sound was hauntingly beautiful. Nathan walked to the edge of the terrace, looking down into the courtyard. The building's design created a natural amphitheater effect, and the voice seemed to echo from the walls. He followed the sound with his eyes, searching for its source. Then he saw it. an open window on the fourth floor, and through it, the unmistakable silhouette of someone in the shower. His first instinct was to look away immediately. Nathan was many things, but an intruder on someone's privacy was not one of them. Yet something held him there for a moment longer. It was not the visual that captivated him, but the song itself. There was such pure joy in that voice, such uninhibited happiness. When was the last time he had felt that free? Reality crashed back, and Nathan stepped away from the railing, his heart beating faster than usual. He felt like a teenager caught doing something wrong. The singing continued for another minute, then stopped. He heard the distant sound of water shutting off. Nathan returned to his chair, but his focus had evaporated. The financial reports suddenly seemed impossibly dull. He found himself thinking about the voice, about the person behind it. Someone in his building had a gift, and they didn't even know they had an audience. His phone buzzed. Vincent, his business partner, was calling about their 10 o'clock meeting. Nathan answered, forcing his attention back to work, but throughout the conversation, his mind kept drifting back to that moment on the terrace. After the call ended, Nathan made a decision. He needed to know who lived in apartment 4C, not to intrude or create awkwardness, but because something about that brief moment had touched him in a way nothing had in years. It reminded him that life existed beyond spreadsheets and board meetings, that beauty and joy could be found in the most unexpected places. He called down to the building manager, casually asking about the resident in 4C. The manager, always eager to please the building's most prominent tenant, was happy to share. Olivia Chen, a school teacher, had lived there for 3 years. Quiet, friendly, always paid her rent on time. Nathan thanked him and ended the call. Olivia. Even her name sounded musical. Meanwhile, Olivia had finished her shower, completely unaware of the impact her morning ritual had created. She dressed in a comfortable burgundy sweater and jeans, dried her hair, and gathered her teaching materials. As she locked her apartment door and headed down the hallway toward the elevator, she felt energized and ready for the day. The elevator arrived, and she stepped inside, pressing the button for the lobby. Just as the doors began to close, a hand appeared, stopping them. The doors reopened, and Olivia found herself face to face with a tall man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. She recognized him vaguely as someone she had seen occasionally in the building, always well-dressed and always seeming to be in a hurry. Nathan Sterling stepped into the elevator, and their eyes met for the briefest moment. He nodded politely, a slight smile touching his lips. Olivia smiled back, then looked down at her phone, checking the time. Neither of them spoke during the short ride to the lobby. The doors opened, and Nathan gestured for her to exit first. She thanked him softly and walked out into the morning sunlight, heading toward the bus stop at the corner. Nathan watched her go, committing every detail to memory. He had heard her voice, now he had seen her face. Something told him this would not be their last encounter. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floor of Sterling Properties' executive suite. Nathan sat behind his mahogany desk, surrounded by architectural models and blueprints, but his mind was elsewhere. Vincent Chen, his business partner of 10 years, noticed the distraction immediately. Vincent was a sharp man with an eye for detail, both in business and in people. He had helped Nathan build their empire from a single property investment into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. More importantly, he had become one of Nathan's few genuine friends. "You have been staring at that same contract for 20 minutes, Vincent observed, leaning back in the leather chair across from Nathan's desk. "Either it contains the secret to eternal life, or something else is on your mind." Nathan looked up, realizing he had been caught. He set down the papers and rubbed his eyes. "Just thinking." "About what?" "We closed the Riverside project months ago. That deal is finished." "Actually, I wanted to ask you something about Riverside," Nathan said carefully. "Do you know anything about the residents there?" Vincent raised an eyebrow. "Why this sudden interest in tenant profiles? That is property management's job." Nathan hesitated. He trusted Vincent completely, but explaining his fascination with a woman whose singing had captivated him felt absurd. Yet he needed advice, and Vincent was the closest thing he had to a confidant. "There is someone in the building," Nathan began slowly. "A woman who lives on the 4th floor. I heard her singing this morning, and it was remarkable. I found myself wondering about her." Vincent's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "Nathan, please tell me you are not developing an interest in one of your tenants. That could create all kinds of complications."
I know how it sounds, Nathan admitted, but it was not like that. There was something about that moment, about the pure joy in her voice. It made me realize how long it has been since I've felt anything close to that happiness. Vincent studied his friend carefully. In all the years they had worked together, he had never seen Nathan express interest in anyone beyond surface-level attraction. The man had become a fortress after his divorce, letting no one close enough to matter. "What are you planning to do?" Vincent asked. "I do not know," Nathan confessed. "Maybe nothing. Maybe just acknowledge that the moment happened and move on. Or maybe," Vincent suggested gently, "you could try being a normal person and simply introduce yourself. You live in the same building. It would not be strange to say hello." Nathan considered this. Vincent was right, of course, but the circumstances of their first real awareness of each other complicated things. How could he meet her without the weight of that morning hanging over him? Across town, Olivia was facing her own internal struggle. She sat in the teacher's lounge during her lunch break, picking at a salad while Rachel talked excitedly about a new restaurant downtown. "Are you even listening?" Rachel finally asked, waving her hand in front of Olivia's face. Olivia snapped back to attention. "Sorry, I've just been distracted today." "All right, what's going on? You've been weird all morning." Olivia debated whether to share her concerns. It would sound paranoid, but the feeling had been nagging her all day. "Do you remember me mentioning the penthouse guy in my building? The real estate millionaire? What about him?" "I think he might have seen me this morning," Olivia said quietly, feeling her cheeks warm. "In the shower." Rachel's eyes widened. "What? How?" Olivia explained about singing with the window open, about the courtyard's acoustics, and about the sudden message from building management about privacy and curtains. "It arrived right after my shower. Someone must have complained, or worse, someone must have seen something." "Liv, you're overthinking this," Rachel said, though her tone suggested she was not entirely convinced. "Lots of people have their windows open. The message could have been a general reminder." "Then why did it feel so specific? And this morning, I ran into him in the elevator. He looked at me in this way, like he recognized me, but we have never spoken before." Rachel leaned forward, intrigued despite herself. "What kind of look?" "I can't explain it. It was just intense, aware, like he knew something I didn't." "Maybe he's just attracted to you," Rachel suggested. "You're beautiful, smart, and talented. Perhaps he has noticed you before and was just working up the courage to say something." Olivia shook her head. "Men like Nathan Sterling don't notice women like me. I've seen the pictures in magazines. He dates models and socialites, women who match his lifestyle." "Now you're selling yourself short," Rachel countered firmly. "You have more substance in your little finger than those women have in their entire bodies. If he did hear you singing, maybe that's what caught his attention, your authenticity." The conversation ended as the lunch bell rang, sending them back to their classrooms. But Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in her world. Some invisible line had been crossed that morning. That evening, as Olivia returned home from dinner with Rachel, she found herself hyper-aware of every shadow in the building. She hurried through the lobby, barely acknowledging the doorman's greeting, and pressed the elevator button repeatedly, as if that would make it arrive faster. The doors opened, and her heart sank. Nathan Sterling stood inside, still dressed in his business attire, though his tie was loosened and his jacket was draped over his arm. He looked tired but alert, and when he saw her, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, certainly, but also something else. Hesitation, perhaps, or concern. "Good evening," he said, his voice deep and measured. Olivia stepped into the elevator, clutching her purse tightly. "Evening." They stood in awkward silence as the elevator began its ascent. Olivia stared at the illuminated floor numbers, watching them climb with agonized. Saturday morning arrived with a gentle rain that washed the city clean. Olivia woke to the sound of droplets pattering against her window, creating a soothing rhythm that matched her contemplative mood. She had barely slept, her mind replaying every moment of yesterday's elevator encounter with Nathan Sterling. She made herself a cup of tea and settled by the window, watching the rain transform the courtyard into a shimmering mirror. The building was quiet at this hour, most residents still sleeping or enjoying their weekend leisure. Olivia pulled her grandmother's old shawl around her shoulders and opened her journal, a habit she had maintained since college. "Yesterday I met the man who heard me singing," she wrote. "Nathan Sterling. He was not what I expected. There was kindness in his eyes, and when he spoke about my music, he seemed genuine. But what kind of future could exist between a schoolteacher and a millionaire? We live in different universes that just happen to share the same building." Across the city, Nathan sat in a quiet corner cafe with Vincent, nursing his second cup of coffee. The rain created a cozy atmosphere, and the cafe was nearly empty except for a few early risers absorbed in their laptops and newspapers. "You look terrible," Vincent observed bluntly. "Did you sleep at all?" "A few hours," Nathan admitted. "I cannot stop thinking about her, Vincent, and I know how that sounds. We have had 2 brief conversations, and yet something about her has gotten under my skin." Vincent stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "You know what I think? I think you are terrified because for the first time since Catherine left, you actually feel something real. It's easier to keep dating those society women because there is no risk, no depth, no possibility of actual connection." "That is not fair," Nathan protested, though without much conviction. "Is it not? When was the last time you let anyone close? When was the last time you took an actual risk with your heart instead of just your money?" Nathan had no answer. Vincent was right, as usual. After his divorce, he had built such high walls around himself that even he had forgotten what it felt like to be vulnerable. "So what do I do?" Nathan asked. "I have already made her uncomfortable. She probably thinks I'm some creep who spies on his neighbors." "Then you need to show her you are not," Vincent said simply. "Find a way to interact with her that is normal, genuine, and gives her control of the situation. Let her decide if she wants to know you." "How do I do that?" Vincent smiled. "You are one of the smartest businessmen I know, Nathan. Use that brain for something more important than real estate for once." That afternoon, as the rain began to clear, Olivia decided to venture out. She needed groceries and some fresh air to clear her head. She grabbed her umbrella and shopping bag, determined to make this a normal Saturday, despite the emotional turbulence of the past 2 days. The elevator arrived empty, and she stepped inside gratefully. But just as the doors began to close, a hand stopped them. Her heart sank as Nathan Sterling stepped in, looking casual in jeans and a navy sweater. This was the first time she had seen him in anything other than formal business attire, and it made him seem more human, more approachable. "Olivia," he said with a slight smile, "going out despite the weather?" "Just groceries," she replied, keeping her voice neutral. "The rain has stopped mostly." Nathan nodded, and an awkward silence fell between them. The elevator descended slowly, and Olivia found herself counting the floors again. 3, 2... "Listen," Nathan said suddenly, his voice uncertain in a way that surprised her. "I know our previous conversations have been uncomfortable, and that's entirely my fault. I handled everything poorly. But I want you to know something." The elevator reached the lobby and stopped, but neither of them moved to exit. "What?" Olivia asked quietly, finally meeting his eyes. "Your music touched something in me that I thought was gone. It reminded me that beauty exists in simple moments, that joy does not require grand gestures or expensive settings. It just requires being present and open to the world. You gave me that gift without even knowing it, and I wanted to thank you properly." Olivia felt her defenses beginning to crack. There was no arrogance in his expression, no hint of superiority, just honest vulnerability from a man who seemed unaccustomed to showing it. "You do not need to thank me," she said softly, "but I appreciate you saying that." The elevator doors began to close again, and Nathan quickly pressed the button to hold them open.
Would you allow me to buy you coffee sometime? Not as anything romantic or complicated, just as neighbors who might become friends. You can choose the place, the time, everything. I promise I am not as intimidating as my reputation suggests." Olivia studied him carefully. Every practical bone in her body told her to decline politely and maintain the comfortable distance between their worlds. But something in his eyes, a loneliness that mirrored her own, made her hesitate. "There's a small cafe 2 blocks from here," she heard herself say. "Rosie's Corner. They have the best apple pie in the city. Tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock?" Nathan's face transformed with a genuine smile that erased years from his features. "I'll be there. Thank you, Olivia." She stepped out of the elevator, her heart pounding. What had she just agreed